Okay, we're going to go ahead and kick things off this morning, and the first thing that I want to do is I want to share with you that this is not a session about social media. Might have a whole Accelerate program on that at some time later in the year if you're interested. There is a very successful agent in town named Tracy French who's had tremendous success with social media. What will be interesting is that will be consistent with some of the other things that Alex and I are going to talk about this morning. But what we're really going to talk about today is, and it has a little bit of a component of why people like social media, I think, because if you think about your social media presence and the most successful people on social media, although they share information about what's going on in their real estate business sometimes on there, many of their successful conversations don't have anything to do with real estate. Does that make sense, Beverly?
It does.
Okay. So what we're going to do today, though, is Alex and I are going to share with you some thoughts about non-real estate conversations that help build relationships. And so before we get into that real deeply, if I can figure out how to get my computer to work here, I want to take a minute to tell you who our guest is today and a little, and we're going to get to know him a little bit better. But Alex is the broker and managing partner of Oxford Rhine Real Estate. He's also our current YPN share, and we will talk about that a little bit toward the end. We've got some of his social links on there, but what I will tell you, and I think Alex and I will share with you, is if you want to go look at his social media links and hope that you're going to see 10,000 posts about everything under the sun, you're going to be disappointed. Alex's success does not come from that predominantly, although he does use it to help build his brand, and he does use it to help reflect his authenticity, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So what I'd like to do just for a minute is help us all get to know Alex a little bit better. And so I guess first, Alex, tell us a little bit about where you're from originally.
Sure, and thank you for having me, Dave. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky. I grew up in the Audubon Park neighborhood. My mom was a teacher at Kentucky Country Day, so I went there K through 12. Then I attended the University of Georgia, spent a few years in Atlanta, then back in Louisville, then out in Colorado. Then I have been back here for about 6-7 years at this point. In terms of
so Alex, do me a favor.
Sure.
I'll have a little trick to this. These 5 questions I want everybody to kind of work through. So You just told us you haven't lived here all your life.
Correct.
Right. What brought you back?
That's a great question. So what generally the transitional city for certainly a lot of University of Georgia students, and I was hired by Gala Wineries and their management program out of college. So I was in the Atlanta market. Tons of friends, and honestly, it was from a real estate perspective. Ironically, I was living in the Buckhead area, which is very popular amongst younger folks, and I'm sitting here going, when I'm eventually going to purchase a home, where am I going to go? My now current, my wife was my girlfriend at the time, and her family lived in the suburbs of Atlanta. And while there's plenty to do out there, I mean, you are pretty isolated in terms of the traffic situation there. So I just, after being there, I also interned down in Houston, Texas for a summer. I had an opportunity to come back, and it was really about quality of life, long-term, where would I like to raise my kids? And you see this kind of transitional pattern, I think, with a lot of folks. And I do think it's great to go out and experience a different city. And then I just had such a great experience and certainly knew all that Louisville had to offer in terms of ease and accessibility. And perhaps I wasn't very patient at the wheel. I don't know.
So to a large degree, though, what I hear you saying is it really was about where you wanted to raise your family and where that next part of your life, it was a good fit.
Correct, without a doubt.
And so you have a family, obviously. Tell me a little bit about them.
I have two daughters. One will be 5 tomorrow. So a lot of rainbows and princess prep at the moment. And then I have a 2.5-year-old So we actually lived in the Highlands for about 7 years, my wife and I did, and then we have moved over back into the Audubon Park neighborhood, which we love, and the girl dad, hashtag it all day long, love it. So the toilet seat is rarely down at my house, and the dog is a girl as well. So there you go, deep in the pink.
So, and I know we know you're in the real estate business, but tell us a little bit about what you do relative to that.
So in terms of in the industry,
like in the industry, what do you specifically specialize or not specialize in? What's kind of your focus, et cetera?
So my background, when we actually returned, my wife did some medical rotations out in Denver, and we went for a couple of years there, which was also great in terms of love Denver, love the accessibility to the mountains. I love fly fishing. Took full advantage of what would now be a very, very expensive vacation for our folks on a very regular basis. Came back, and it was one of those kind of cliche deals. I knew I wanted to get into the real estate industry. How do I do it? And it was really calling and contacting everyone. Coffee, let me buy you coffee. Let me buy you a beer. No pressure. I want to learn how you got into the industry, so on and so forth. It was absolutely an informal avenue to go about. So got my license. That was a suggestion, certainly. And then I went and worked for Underhill Associates, very, well-respected local firm, had been here doing a lot of very unique projects. And at that time, we had really just kind of started turning the dirt on the Germantown Mill Lofts. So 3-tiered company, more or less. There's a brokerage, there's a asset management side, and then there's the development firm. I played baseball for Germantown. That corridor through Goss was, very, very, let's say, dark and quiet for a number of years. So that project was super exciting. And then I certainly could diversify into a lot of different things. So I knew for me, I was going to go all in. I'll work as many hours and many days as it takes. I can learn some of the development side. I can learn certainly the brokerage side, and then also the asset management piece. What that ties into what I currently do so I have 2 partners. We started Underhill Associates. This is literally our 3rd year, starting basically this month. We are, I guess you could say, a boutique firm to a certain extent, but we're multidisciplinary. I probably spend 50 to 60% of my time in commercial, and then another, let's say 20 to 25% on residential. And then we do a lot of portfolio asset management, and then also investment management. These all kind of, depending on what's going on, we'll I guess, adjust from time to time. Long term, my goal would certainly be a little bit more of portfolio management for some of our clients that we're developing relationships with. So, knowing the asset management side, super key with a lot of it. And then in terms of, residential, I do have a lot of my commercial clients become residential clients. So there's a lot of carryover, but certainly a lot of time spent in each aspect of these, kind of specialties.
And so when you say portfolio management, I think I know what you mean, but I'm sure there's at least one person on the call that does not know what you mean. So what do you mean by portfolio management?
It's a great thing to say, especially if you put it on your resume. It's one of those really, LinkedIn keywords. So a number of things. We will help someone with their real estate portfolio, whether we are involved or not. They come in, they're trying to diversify, or, hey, I'm a doctor, I want to get into real estate. What does that look like? I want to get a real estate or get a rental house. Well, let's talk about that. What does that look like from your involvement? Do you want to be a passive investor, hands-on? A lot of times in that case, we talk about what that takes to manage that property, and they go, no. Maybe there's a fund that they want to get involved in. So we can take more of a financial approach or connect them with a clients of ours or contacts of ours that have, strategic funds, whether they're investments in multifamily, are they local funds, are they national funds? So we can be the catalyst, whether we are going to obtain that business or not, we can help them grow that portfolio. So it really is, again, kind of that discovery process with them in terms of what are their goals, what are they trying to do, but we can help. Hey, what does your current asset list look like?
And then do you manage the property for them afterwards if they want you to? Do you do the actual property management?
We do, I'll call it, here's another key, I'll call it strategic property management. So we have looked to make property management firms, if you were going to go all in, you need a lot of doors to make that a profitable and actually run in a strategic fashion. So you need all the bells and whistles. We just were never going to be a, hey, you have a rental house, let me do that. You have one rental house, I got to charge you probably this. Now we'll connect you with someone that we feel is a good industry kind of leader in that area. But what is our kind of time worth at the end of the day? We manage a handful of commercial properties. And a lot of that is that our clients understand that because we are kind of a little smaller on that frame, we are really involved with that property. We are taking care of that asset. So it really generally in that side of our business depends on our relationship with the client, the specific property involved. We've looked to potentially make some acquisitions of some asset management firms locally that would make sense if we were trying to scale. So again, it is that side of the business involves so much time and effort, and it's really, we're getting there in my opinion, but we'll see.
So what did you want to be when you were growing up?
It's funny, you know, I think if you look there's some old childhood videos where I told my dad I wanted to be a professional golfer and a milkman. So I think at the same time, if I'd maybe hit a few more range balls and understood what it took at the time, maybe the professional golfer would be great. But certainly it was going to be something entrepreneurial, and probably something a little bit more high pressure and a little bit more high stakes, you know.
Great.
Get in what you put in.
So I went through that exercise with everybody on the call with Alex, first because I do want to get to know him better and I want you all to get to know him better, but also because I want you to take these 5 questions to heart. These 5 questions are a phenomenal way to build rapport with people you do not know. And these are non-real estate questions, right? Would everybody agree those are all, other than the fact that Alex happens to be in the real estate industry, we didn't talk about real estate at all. But think about all the things we now know, okay? I know he likes baseball. I know he wishes he was a pro golfer. He'd probably love to own something, love to have owned something in the golfing industry when he was young, but now he's in the real estate business. I'm pretty sure I inferred that he's married to a doctor. He's got 2 young kids. He lives in Audubon Park, which is where he grew up. So his roots are pretty tied. He likes to fly fish, right? All those things we picked up, and that conversation took 8 minutes. Here's the other key thing about this. Did everybody notice I didn't say very much? Right? So what was I doing? I was listening. And this is the beginning of, okay, one of the main things we want to talk about today, okay? And that is the top of the funnel versus the bottom of the funnel. And Alex and I happen to be, interestingly enough, very aligned on how we look at this, but we didn't know that till we got to know each other better and started talking about this. It just so happens that we are aligned, okay? But let's talk about what the difference is between the top of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel. The top of the funnel, the wide part of the funnel, the part of the funnel that grows your business widest for the longest period of time, is all about referrals, past clients, friends and family of friends and family, sphere of sphere, friends of sphere, etc., right? It's about growing that big, deep, wide pie. And the bottom of the funnel is random connections, cold calling, purchased leads, etc. So what we want to focus today is on, for example, how does that introductory conversation that we just had help you build the top of your funnel? Okay. And why do we feel like that is a much better long-term focus than the bottom of the funnel? So before Alex and I get into that and kind of a discussion of it, let me mention a couple of things that I think are important to set as a framework. If you are in the real estate business and you are on this call and you have been in the real estate business for more than 10 years, who on the call has been in the real estate business more than 10 years? Christine has, okay? Will has, okay? Has anybody else? Okay, so let's just focus my conversation with Christine and Will for a minute. So Christine and Will, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I need you to just answer yes or no what you think. You can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You think that today's market is not representative of a typical or predictable real estate market, is not predictive. You agree with that, Christine? You think that there will be a time in the future when we return to a more normal market. In a normal market, you'd rather be at the top of the funnel or the bottom of the funnel? Right. So Christine, unmute yourself for a minute if you don't mind. So
Hey,
those
Dave.
of you who don't know, I knew Christine had been in the real estate business for more than 10 years. Christine's been doing this for a while. She's very successful. Talk a little bit with all of us, Christine, about why, from your perspective, do you feel like you want to be at the top of the funnel instead of the bottom of the funnel?
Well, referrals, past clients, friends and family, and sphere. I mean, that's the bread and butter of, should be the bread and butter of everybody's business, I think.
And so in your current business, now that you've been doing this for a while, is that where the bulk of your current business comes from?
100%.
Okay. Will, is that largely true for you, or are you kind of in a mix right now?
No, 100% top of the
Okay.
funnel.
Okay. So I mentioned that for everybody else that's on the call, because here you have very experienced agents who've had a lot of success, and they're validating what we're talking about. So the question that I have for you, Alex, is what are the things that you've done to help fill the top of the funnel, and how do you engender those relationships? And more specifically, what are the types of things you talk about that are not real estate related that help you to fill that funnel?
This is those questions, everything, phenomenal exercise. And so it's almost keep it simple. Like there's a simplicity behind this. The one thing I do specifically with my sphere, I do not expect them to use me. I don't think that because we have some relationship that how could they certainly, if they ever need anything, they're going right to me. I treat them as if they're a client that I'm, typically trying to earn their business and continue to earn their business and continue to have that relationship and mold that continuously, like similar just a friendship or whatnot. So I just never expect them to use me. I don't feel like I'm entitled in that degree. But here's what it's as simple. These are thank you notes that are going out. So I write letters, and in terms of social media, I'm using social media. But when are birthdays? What's going on with their kids? Did their kids just play t-ball? Did a kid just start playing golf? Can I get them a random custom golf glove or something? A friend like that. But I also try to become their resource when it comes to any question around their house, their home. Do they have a yard guy, a driveway guy, a roof guy? Do they have a leak? So my interaction becomes, hey, they may need me in a couple of years. And then this was a point, we had a speaker yesterday at a YPN event who brought this up as well, where it's almost like a reverse prospecting to where, then, hey, call Alex. He has a guy or a girl that's great at whatever that can help them around their house and get them out of a bind. So I just try to surround myself with a very solid Rolodex of whether it's on the financial front or folks want to invest, they know that they can call. And it's not this business or I'm trying to obtain business on a regular basis. It is, let me be the key guy to help them with all of these things that we all know we face when we're dealing with, home ownership or even an apartment. They have plenty of apartment experience. So what does that look like? Or negotiating a lease? There's just so many facets that, if I spend a lot of my time learning and reading and researching and asking questions or connecting with a real estate attorney or somebody else on if they need a will, things of that nature. So
I think I heard two key words here that I want everybody to kind of key in on. And one is to be a resource. And the second is to be a connector. So I want to focus on that second piece for a minute. I want to share something with you. And again, many of you on the call may know this, but let's just talk through this and make sure that this can be a really concrete thing to help people. So when you are in a networking situation, or when you are trying to build relationships, the most valuable thing that you can do is be a connector. And I want to compare and contrast two behaviors. Okay? So I want you to imagine that you decide you're going to go to the St. Matthews Area Chamber of Commerce meetings. And that's going to be part of your business plan, is to get connected to the St. Matthews Area Chamber of Commerce because you want to farm and build your business in St. Matthews. Let's just use that as an example. Person A goes to the St. Matthews Area Chamber of Commerce, and their focus is to get the business cards of, the contact information of, the names of people that they can follow up with and call on to try to build a relationship with and or get them as customers or referral sources. That's person A's behavior. And traditionally, if you ask the average person, that's what they would tell you you should be doing. Christine, do you ever remember a point in your time in your career when somebody suggested you do that? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to give you a completely different reinforcement of what Alex just told you. Now I want you to go to your networking event and imagine that your goal is to find 3 people in the room that you could either introduce to someone else in the room, or that you could introduce to someone else you know and help them make a connection. Think about how much more powerful it would be if those 3 people at the end of the next week or two saw you as a person that could connect them to someone else they needed, and vice versa. Now, this is a completely top of the funnel perspective, right? The bottom of the funnel says, go to the meeting and find some people who need to buy or sell a house, or know somebody who needs to buy or sell a house, right? The top of the funnel says, let's go meet some people that somebody I know might need to know.
Can y'all hear me?
Tracy, you need to mute. Is everybody with me? And so the whole idea of this is the connector is the powerful person. And I'll tell you where I first saw this happen, and it made a profound effect on me. And I've been studying it now for 20 years. So I went to a chamber meeting in 2001, and I'll never forget it. It was downtown. I think it was at Glassworks, if I remember correctly, but it was one of the buildings that was opening downtown. And I looked over in the corner, and I saw this person standing in the corner, and I saw 15 people gathered around them in a circle having a conversation. And so I walked over, and as I walked up, somebody in the group said to me, they don't know me from Adam. They said, hey, let me introduce you to the best realtor in town. And then the next thing that happens is I see this person having a open rotary kind of conversation about everything under the sun with these 15 people, and they're not talking about real estate at all. They're talking about what's going on in this part of town. They're talking about how great an artist Sue is. They're talking about all kinds of non-real estate things. So then I left the meeting and I did a little research. Now I knew a little bit about this person, but I didn't know that much because I'd been gone from Louisville for 20 years. It was Sandy Gulick. So this made a profound impression upon me, because what Sandy's power in that room was not her expertise as a realtor, although some people knew she was really good at it. Her power was that she got those 10 or 15 people talking to each other about all kinds of things that didn't have anything to do with real estate. Is everybody with me? So now you take what Alex was saying and you think about all the things that you can have conversations about, right? That may be of value to your clients. They may give you how many of you have been on one of my calls and heard me talk about VCP, right? Visibility leads to credibility, which leads to profitability. And the whole VCP model is about, I just need to be visible to people in a way that demonstrates some care, some concern, and some professionalism. And that's part of how I start earning their respect. You know, one of the things that Alex mentioned is he approaches it from the expectation that he shouldn't expect anybody to do business with him. He should have to earn it from everybody. And I've taken that approach too. I think that's the perfect way to look at things, right? So if you're going to earn it, does it make sense that you need to be having these conversations when they don't need you, right? So that's a top of the funnel behavior. So let's go back and just see, does anybody have anything that they've done on this call to either share with people information that is of value or to reach out to them in a specific way that helps reinforce your visibility, but is not directly asking for business? Anybody got anything they've done other than Alex?
I do, Dave. I have, my dad owned an asphalt company before he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And I initially sent out letters to them, just introducing myself to them and sending them some forget-me-not flowers with his name on it, seeds with his name on them. And after I sent out all 560 letters, I just started following up with gift cards, not gift cards, thank you cards behind that. So I sent out maybe 10 a day because it's so many. And it's been working for me. Not only if it's helping me on the real estate side, but it's also helping me because I'm kind of part of Jennifer the Asphalt Steel. So it's actually helping us on that end too.
Okay, so there's an example of something. You know, I had an agent in my firm years ago that did this every spring. It seems kind of, I don't know what the right term for it is, but it's definitely old school. Okay, but she used to send forget-me-nots every spring with a handwritten note that said, anything you need, I'm here for you. Not anything you need in real estate. Anything you need. Okay. One of the things that I do, and I mean this sincerely when I do it, when someone has a loss in their life or a tragedy, I often send them a text or a voicemail that says, I am here for anything you need, including I will come take out your trash. That doesn't have anything to do with real estate. That's just being a human, right? And so that's the counselor model. I'm here for whatever, whenever. Here's another thing I want you to get into your dialogue. I say this all the time. I think it's really powerful. I'm going to be in the real estate business way after you're done having this transaction, even if it's 10 years from now. I'm here for you forever. I had a client the other day that said to me, they went and looked at a house. And so I want you to imagine this, especially if you're newer in the business, I want you to imagine this. You go show an $800,000 house. And when your buyer leaves at 6 o'clock, you're having a conversation about what to offer, right? And you're thinking through all the different things. And you get sent home with a list of questions to ask. And then the next morning, you're thinking you're doing a follow-up to prepare your offer. And they say, you know, I had some things happen today, and I'm just not really sure this is the right time for me. I'm so sorry I wasted your time. Now, first thing is, especially if you're newer in the business, and this is true for all of us, okay? All right. Nobody has that conversation, doesn't think, well, that's kind of a bummer, right? Okay. And on the other hand, if you're really in this for the long haul, if you're really here for people and not for yourself, okay, what are you going to say? Right? That's the real estate, that's the non-real estate conversation. And so in this particular case, my response is, well, you couldn't have wasted my time, because I'm going to be doing this for a long time, and I'm here for you when you need me, not when I need you. Right? And that has to be the way you approach this. I'm sure Christine would tell you that when she first got in the business, it was harder to approach it that way than it is today, right, Christine? Right? And there are people in our profession, Alex, I'm sure can tell you, I know Will can tell you, I know Christine can tell you, I'm not sure, I don't know everybody on the call well enough, but I know we can tell you, there are practitioners that teach you to do this the other way. Anybody ever been to a James seminar? Right? Jared's mindset is, if they ain't ready, I ain't ready, and I'm moving on. Who's next? Right? Okay. And I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying it's not congruent with the way I want to build my business. And I don't think it's as much of a top of the funnel approach. Right? And so you really, really want to be long-term focused. So one of the things that Alex talked about was his Rolodex. So go back to my networking analogy, right? And think about how being a connector in a network relationship is the same as being a connector with your clients in general, okay? One of the greatest compliments anybody ever paid me early in my career, and I really took it to heart, was I had a client who used to call me on the phone. This was 10 years ago. And this is when Google was pretty new. And he would say, hey, Google, I need a. That was how he would start the conversation, right? What a compliment that is to that top of the funnel concept, right? Everybody with me? And so what's interesting about that is that's a person who 5 years down the road, after I'd answered 25 different Google I need us, referred me to somebody who was going blind that needed to sell a house. And that person has since referred me to 3 or 4 other people, right? And so what were those questions that I was answering when I was taking the time to share my Rolodex that I wasn't getting paid anything? What were they worth, right? My God, who knows? If I do this for 20 more years, it could be, right? Everybody with me, okay? So being a connector, really important, all right? The counselor model. Alex, talk a little bit about how you have a conversation with somebody. And I'm guessing that at least 50% of your conversations are with people who are going to build a portfolio or invest. But whether that's the case or it's a residential, I want to buy a house, talk a little bit about the counselor conversation you have on the front end that's not about the real estate. What are the other things you want to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's your point in listening. So you're going to get this breadcrumb trail of things that we can pick up on, but it's simple questions on life. Where are they? How has whatever's going on in the world impacted them? So it really is just a conversation and asking questions about, their family, their kids, what's going on. And then that certainly will trigger into potential, we're maybe going to try for a third, or, impacting space, or how are their jobs going? And I'm truly interested in what they have going on. How's their family doing? Everything along those lines. So it's just simple engagement, but Dave, your key word is listening. So I used to certainly in the past would try to overtake a conversation and go. And it's really just take a breath and listen and really try to authentically understand what's going on in somebody's life.
Okay, so this is really important. So one of the things that this is so funny, you would think Alex had my slides, but he doesn't. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is being authentic. And this is a picture of the Dalai Lama. If anybody doesn't recognize him, if you've ever seen the Dalai Lama in person, we were really blessed in Louisville many years ago that he came and visited, and I went. It was one of the most refreshing things I've ever been to. But one of the things about him that I thought was the most refreshing is that he was so authentic about everything. Whether it was his giggle or when he was sarcastic. Did anybody happen to go to that event? Well, here's what's interesting about the Dalai Lama. He could tell you you were full of beans in a way that was with laughter that didn't offend you, but he was authentically saying, really? You really just said that? Right? He was so genuine and so sincere. And so I just use that as a representative of that. And there's lots of other really authentic people out there. Okay. But what is authenticity? Right? You know, Paige, are you available to unmute?
Hey guys, I'm here.
When you think of authenticity, what do you think of?
Well, my coach, who's James Rimbert, the Zillow killer, he tells me to be unapologetically me. And he says you will attract the people who are attracted to you, who want to work with you. I'm a mom. I am crazy busy. I love real estate, and I love bourbon too, right? So I'm not just like a wine, drinking mom. So, my clients and my sphere, they know those things about me, and I can connect with them being authentic as another mom or another bourbon drinker or a lover of Louisville and all things real estate. But authenticity to me is being unapologetically you. We're not going to be fake and make people think we're something we're not.
Okay, I think that's a perfect description. And I think the other thing that's really great about being authentically you is that one of the things that those of us that have been doing this for a while or have been around any type of sales for a while that we realize is we're not the right fit for everybody. Okay. And truthfully, if we were, how boring would life be? Right. But think about this. Okay. I tell this story all the time. Many years ago, I had somebody call me and say, hey, Dave, I went out on a listing appointment and they asked me to find another person to come and present to them. And I immediately thought you should be the one. And I do sincerely believe that they thought I was a very good practitioner, but knowing my style and their style, I couldn't fathom that a human would want the two of us to interview for the same thing. And so my scan kind of went up and I said, instead of sending myself, I'm going to send, and in this case, I sent Nancy Lage from my office. And I said, now, Nancy, when you go, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about all the things that are not real estate, especially back then. I was so hard charging, ready to go, matter of fact, all about, that was my style, right? So anyway, the long story short is I send Nancy and say, just be yourself. I said, but when you get there, I suggest you talk about and look around and just see what this person's interested in. Because my guess is they don't really want to talk about real estate very much. They're probably going to be into some other stuff. Long story short is Nancy goes, she sits down. They talk about fish. They talk about Flow Blue China. They talk about, I cannot remember, Thomas Kincaid paintings, right? And lo and behold, that combined with, she's a pro, she's been around a long time, she's with a good company, she's got a good marketing plan, she gets the business. And she comes back. I said, how'd it go? She said, went exactly like you would. Dave, if you'd have gone, you'd have lost this lady in 5 minutes. Right? So the point is, we're not the right butt for every seat. Right? And you got to be yourself. And remember that when you're in a relationship with people, if you're yourself and you do a good job, even if you're not the right fit for them, they'll refer you down the road sometimes. I've had this happen more than once in my career. I bet Christine can say the same thing. I've had people that I didn't get their business refer me to their best friend 2 years later because they knew that I was going to be a good fit for that person. Or maybe even in some cases, they made a decision to work with somebody else. And then they went back and said, maybe that style wasn't what I thought I wanted, but maybe I do. Right? So I think that's really important. So be authentic. Then as a strategy, okay, to be authentic, all right, you've got to find the things that you're interested in, that others are interested in, and focus there. Let's go back to Alex's background. And one of the things I asked him about is, so for example, Alex went to the University of Georgia. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's more Georgia alum in Louisville than you think. Okay. All right. Especially since the SEC came up with the Common Scholarship Program and those types of things. But it's a great school. It's not that far away. Right. So Alex, there's an example of one of your potential connectors, one of your potential strategies. But can you talk just a little bit about, like, are there some lanes that are common to your interests that you've made some connections in that weren't about talking about real estate, but they were about making other connections that gave you greater visibility?
Yeah, and I'll certainly speak to that. It is, whether I'm spending time, I was ambassador for the Family and Children's Place. So that helped a lot of folks, I think, are trying to find out where can they, they probably get solicited for funds to donate here and there. And I could make a really authentic reach out on, hey, this is what this program is about. If you were having some dollars you wanted to put somewhere, hey, so it's just a connection there. So I think whether you're on a board somewhere or things of that nature and can kind of go that lane. But I think another point I wanted to make in terms of authenticity, and I'll speak to certainly new agents. When you are reaching out to your, let's say, sphere of influence, every broker is probably saying, hey, find me 10 people that you can reach out to and let them know what you're doing. Well, what's the content that then you're presenting? And I think if you're saying, listen, I have gotten into the real estate industry, I'm passionate about it, I know you have choices, I know you probably know 10 different realtors, but if you give me the opportunity when that time comes, and it's not, I know everything, I'm the best at it. It would really mean a lot if you gave me a shot, and so on and so forth. So I think it's even being more direct about what you're trying to do and honest, specifically for, let's call it rookie agents. And I think it's funny because they may try to go through some of our avenues we've discussed in terms of not talking about real estate and things like that. But right now with this particular market, I feel like I'm in a lot of conversations and people are going, man, the market's so hot. Man, it must be crazy. I feel we have discussions all the time going, I really feel sorry and for folks that are just entering the market, because it would be really difficult to obtain business. So I think, David, goes back to your point of, well, do we all think that everything will normalize at some particular point? Sure. But that I wouldn't be waiting until then to start proactively getting ahead of the curve. So it's really, I think about that authentic, yep, it is a hot market. Boy, I wish there were a lot more listings out there for me to kind of get my feet wet. So I think that there is just not sending, hey, here's on my Facebook post, I've just gotten into the real estate industry. If you need anything, holler at me, let me know. It's writing a letter and being honest. And then on the flip side of that is investing your time in learning as much as you can before you go out with that first client or that second client and can have a successful transaction right off the bat. So
I think another thing that I want to share along what Alex said, and I'd love to hear Christine and Will and anybody else that's been around for 8 or 10 years and see if they agree or disagree. But one of the people in my firm was recently on a trip with some pretty successful people in Louisville in different industries, and 4 or 5 of them had been in real estate years ago, decades ago. And when he asked them, well, what's the one thing you wished you'd done differently? Every single one of them had the same answer. They said, I wished when I had opportunities early in my career, I had gone and found somebody really good and taken them with me and shared the deal and learned. Right? And so one of the things that Alex is talking about, when you're having these conversations early on and just asking for the opportunity, if you're not sure you're going to be a really good competitor, take somebody with you. You know, 100% of zero is zero, and 50% of $1 million is a lot of money.
And Dave, what I've found is that people in our industry are like, they're incredibly helpful. They want to share information. I've called Dave's father about commercial. He's come to our office and shared experiences. But if I have a question, whether they're involved from a monetary perspective or not, people are really, really generous with their time. And I think people, especially newer agents, have a tough time, a little insecurity of like, I really don't know what I'm doing. We've all been there. We have, and each transaction's different, and we're probably going to be there at the next one and feeling the same way, whether you've been in this for 8 or 10 years. It's really just relieving yourself of the, I think, insecurity of putting yourself out there, whether that's on social media, but I think it's vitally important, like you said, to seek out counsel. Take them on that listing. Hey, I would love to get you involved, and then let your client know. Listen, I've got our number one guy or gal coming with me because I want to make sure that your transaction is my number one priority. And so the more folks helping out, the better. And so I think it goes back to what value am I bringing to this transaction? As we know, and I look at this in every transaction, specifically residential, they have access to a ton of information. How many of us are getting texts saying, hey, can I go look at this house? Can I go look at this? And we talk about this all the time in terms of how do we combat Zillow? Well, we can combat Zillow with all the things we've talked about, the Rolodex, the inspection, but also what value am I bringing? Am I bringing more people to help me with this transaction? And this person feels like, oh my gosh, they've brought look how many people are worried about what is going to happen with us through this process. And it's really removing, and it's maybe hard to do when you're just getting involved because rents due, insurances due, all of those things. You just have to be patient and understand that this is such a long game. I mean, we look at we're a new brokerage, we're independently owned, and it is year 5 is our kind of projected, stabilization point. And think about it, year 5, not year 2. So we've got to work through how we're going to take care of each other and our families to get to that juncture. But there's not going to be let's say a new BMW out here in year 2. So I think there's just the realities of what you have to look at and from a patient's perspective, but it doesn't all of a sudden happen. And I think folks that have been involved in this industry for a long time will come back to that on a regular basis and say, hey, yes, first few years are tough, but if you are committed to, whatever processes or ideas that have come from this or other meetings that are similar to it, if you implement them, boy, you'd hate to be 6 months from now going, man, I wish I had done that marketing, idea, or I wish I had reached out to my sphere. You've got to be disciplined in that approach. And listen, I have plenty to work on from that regard. And it's, hey, I'm too busy, or I'll get to that. It's kind of like exercising. I when we do it, boy, we feel good about it, but man, I'm tired and I was up early, and it's a bevy of excuses we can throw at it. So it's just not, it's not going to no one's going to do it for you. It is the epitome of that. It is just not go. And I used to, I think in my 20s, when I was working, I was like, man, somebody will call me and give me a job offer here. Or like somebody, it was always, hey, let me look at this. Somebody will make sure that everyone loves you in your sphere and your friends. But boy, when it comes to business,
You got to earn it.
Relationships and effort are what will end up being the point of transaction. It's just no one's going to do it for you.
I think that's really important. And I want to hone in on something else, though, that Alex said that I think is also critical too. If you are in a situation early in your career where you need to be more hungry, you need to be a little more bottom of the funnel while you're being top of the funnel. Own it.
Yo.
Okay. One of the things that, okay, somebody needs to mute their phone because I got a lot of background noise. I apologize. One of the things that early on in my career, I used to say a lot is, and I meant it sincerely. This is the way I feed my kids. The opportunity to compete for your business is really important to me. And I'm not asking you to hire me. I'm asking you to give me a chance to compete. And if you're on this call and you don't think you're in a competitive business, my number one message is there's some kind of funny stuff in your water, because this is a competitive business. Okay. And the other thing about it is, if you don't want to compete, why do this? Right? Because if you go back to what Paige said earlier and what we're talking about being authentic, everybody isn't the right fit for everybody, which means by definition, we should be competing. By definition, the public should talk to 2 people, right? Or 3 people. Now, that doesn't always happen that way. And once we've earned their trust and respect, they may be our customer forever. But on the other hand, I'll tell you this right now. If any friend of mine, any past client of mine said, Dave, I'm going to give you a shot at this piece of business, but I want you to know I'm going to look at somebody else. Every single time I'd say, go for it. And if they out earn me, the only thing I ask you is tell me what I did wrong. Tell me where I messed it up. Tell me where I let you down. Right? Okay. I have a lot of people in our franchise network who use buyer brokerage agreements. And they use them because they want to get the person locked in. And especially in some of the really, really cutthroat markets, they've determined that that's the way they need to do their business. I've used a buyer brokerage agreement one time in my whole career. Okay? Because this is my theory. If I can't earn your business and I messed it up, shame on me. And this has been the way I've been since the very beginning. And let me tell you, if you're on this call and you're hungry, I was beyond hungry. I gave up a professional income as a Marine officer, and my wife quit a job with a Fortune 500 company, and I went straight commission. And I had 2 kids under the age of 4. I was hungrier than hungry. So my point is, it's okay to tell people that. Because the reality is, here's the other thing about being authentic. I'm not talking about anybody. I'm just talking about what I'm talking about. But there are many people in our industry who are experienced enough now that they're not that hungry anymore. And so the person who wants a really hungry person to go out and go to work for them will be gravitated to that. And I'm going to use an example of this that's close and near and dear to my heart, although he's not in my company, but Alex knows him because he brought him up earlier, and I want to use it as an example, and I think Christine knows him too. 6 or 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, my father, who's been in the real estate business for 50-something years, his realtor number is 300 and something. Okay? It's a true story. It's an important story too, about being authentic and being genuine and being there for people. He decided to transition from being a builder developer to go back to the real estate business on the sales side. And he went out and he started prospecting. And because of the particular point that he was in his life, he said, you know, the way I'm going to approach this is I'm going to go find people who need help, and I'm going to help them on anything they need help with, and I'm going to earn their business. Well, one of the people he called on had a bunch of houses that were worth anywhere from $0 to about $40,000, maybe $70,000 on the high end back then. And most of them needed to be rehabilitated. And this man with 40-something years of experience went and earned, through showing them that he would get their $30,000 and $40,000 and $50,000 problems to go away, that he was willing to go the extra mile. Right? Now think about this. This is an experienced person. Okay, now he was a little hungry at that time. He wanted to rebuild this part of his business. But how many of us would have gone and done that? Right? Okay, so here's the outcome of that. Last year, he was the number 10 agent in the state of Kentucky in RE/MAX at 78 years old in the whole state. Why? Because he went and earned it on the front end. He didn't expect it. He earned it. He prospected. He said, hey, look, I'm hungry, guys. I'll go out and do things other people won't do. So if that's you and that's authentic, that's great, right? But go compete, right? And go have these conversations. You know, Alex and I's big message from today, just go be yourself, but go be it a lot, right? You're not, and Christine's smiling because she knows you're not going to make a living in this business working an hour a day. And the worst thing about the current market, which is why I asked those questions on the front end, is I promise you this bottom of the funnel thing that's being a little bit more productive than it should be right now isn't going to go on forever. This thing of I meet somebody I didn't know and they are so eager to go get a house, I go find anything I can get and make as many offers as I can and as fast. That's not how this business really works typically. And it's not going to be that way. All right. It's more typical. If you ask Will and Alex and Christine, the people who've been doing this for a while, it's more typical to spend 6 months or a year with somebody before they buy a house. Right. And so think about how that would change your behaviors and use these conversations. Have these conversations over and over and over again. Raise your visibility, but be yourself. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is how people see you when you're not doing real estate. Now, I happen to grab this off of Alex's site, okay, and you'll notice his picture's not here. But Alex, can you talk a little bit about how you came to do this this thing for 7 County Services and what you all did and how did you collaborate on it?
Yeah, so I think this is a good point. And the presence on social media is something that we are, you know, from a branding perspective, we're very focused on in terms of the look. We're going to make a hire, so there's a little bit more focus on, you know, the volume and things of that nature. But, you know, Matt McCall, who runs a lot of our residential, was heavily involved in this charitable pursuit. And so that's important for us to show, hey, it's not always here's this listing, here's that. What is the content that you're presenting? Are you recycling content? Is it, you know, are you doing, we're just trying to do something a little bit different. But this also shows that from our firm's perspective, like, yes, the charitable aspect is very important. It's not about just kind of an image, but yeah, we are doing things that aren't specific to just real estate. And I think it goes back to our conversations. It's now we're getting in front of folks and we're keeping, you know, kind of top of mind, but let's get some content. And we're proud of this. This is a very fun endeavor that we did and everyone was involved. And so it's a little bit of this authenticity approach of, yeah, we're doing a charitable pursuit, and we want folks to know that, hey, they can get involved, and there's not any aspect of selling or trying to be your real estate agent. It's really simple at the end of the day.
And here's the other thing about this that I want to share with everybody on the call, and I want you to think about. Everybody has something they're passionate about, or several things they're passionate about that don't have anything to do with the real estate business. Well, be a connector for that, right? Go to your sphere and figure out how you do some things that demonstrate to people that you're about more than the business. And they're going to see you in a different light. And I'm not saying to do that to get business. If you go do that, and then at the end of it, you say, do you want to sell a house? Do you know anybody wants to sell a house? Do you want to buy a house? Can I be your realtor? That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that, and what Alex is saying is that people gravitate to good people. Okay. It's that, there's a couple of cliches that are really, really true, right? People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care, right? And people like to be around people that they like. Now, there's a spot in every business for somebody that's just a bull in a china cabinet, hell be damned, in your face person, because there's somebody out there that wants that person. But the predominance of people, the bulk of the market, wants to work with people that they like, they know, and they trust. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So the last thing I want to share with you, I really want to first thing, I hope everybody enjoyed this morning's session. I really appreciated you all being here. I want to do a couple of things. First thing is, I want to make sure, are there any unanswered questions or anything that you'd like to share with the group? Okay. So the last thing I want to do, I want to thank Alex so much for taking his time for us this morning. It's a lot bigger deal than you think to take your time to do these things and think through it. And I know Alex well enough to know he took some time beforehand and just kind of thought through how he wanted to think about this. And so we appreciate that. But I also want to give him a moment to talk a little bit about the YPN and why, as a place for emerging professionals or people in our industry that want to improve their skill set, get to know each other, might want to get involved. So Alex, can you take a minute to talk about that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave. And I think that this is a separate kind of aspect of our business that I think people want to get more involved in and want to take advantage of the resources, similar to, I want to do this marketing plan, or I want to reach out to these people, but I'm so busy, so I'll get to it later. GLAR has such a variety of options, from classes to networking to committees that you can get involved in, and certainly learn and collaborate outside of what people are getting exposed to in their traditional brokerages. So YPN is, it's now GLAR, your professional network. We were the young professional network, which skewed, I think, some folks from wanting to get involved due to one particular word in there. But with that being said, Tasha, who has been instrumental in kind of this rebranding approach, what we saw is that this is an opportunity for folks to come and collaborate, talk about business outside of their brokerages, and attend events, and certainly take further advantage of what their dues and GLAR has to offer. There is just so much. And I'll say I was one before I got involved in this committee that didn't take full advantage of a lot. I would attend some classes, but if you go to, GLARYPN.com, you'll just see how much, kind of opportunity there is to connect. There's different events, forums. We're trying to grow the member directory on that, and certainly create some further business resources. But on top of that, I think if you could start there, and then even look at National Association of Retailers, NAR, and all of those, there's just so much information that if you're looking for different, business plans and ideas from our call today, there's a lot of information that you can find useful. And I hate to always say it, but we pay for it. But again, YPN is just a great, I think, option for folks that are trying to connect, get on a committee, get involved, and learn from some other folks in the industry. And I'll go back to when we do get in competitive situations, or we are working with agents on the other side of a deal. Certainly we want to protect our clients' interests, but we're trying to collaborate with that other agent. I think a lot of times it gets contentious for whatever particular reason. And, networks like YPN is when we are, I think, kind of breaking into more of a collaborative approach, and certainly keeping with all the professional standards, but it helps these transactions, I think, at the end of the day, function a little bit better representation of clients, because it doesn't become personal for the agents. We are protecting interests, but we are respecting the boundaries. And so working, all of a sudden I'm working a transaction with somebody that I've met through YPN. And we know that, hey, the standard is raised in terms of, I think, how some of these transactions go. So I'd strongly advise folks to check this out, and all that the GLAR has to offer. There's just a lot of awesome resources.
And Alex, are you all meeting virtually or in person now?
So yesterday we actually had an event where we had 4 agents that shared their experiences, whether social media and things of that nature, all the way to transactions they're involved in, or a similar kind of meeting like this. But we had that at Tasha, where were we? We were down at Melwood. There we go. So that was in person. We're trying to get more of these events to move more into the safe in-person atmosphere. So that's certainly been a challenge, I think, of every committee over the last year. But we are doing more non-virtual events at this point, but have had success with some of the virtual events we've had in the past year. There's an accountant, we had a CPA on talking about, certainly that was a great class for new agents, and I think experienced agents to, I think everyone gets kind of their routine, but we had the CPA that gives his advisement on things in our industry to look out for. And they're very good resources and good ways to spend your time outside of just, your own day-to-day business.
Perfect. Well, we really appreciate your time today. And I personally, as a member of the Board of Realtors, appreciate your dedication to help and lead up YPN. I know it's a labor of love, but we really appreciate that. I want to give special kudos to Tasha. As Alex said, we've rebranded now the YPN. We've rebranded this Accelerate program, and she's an invaluable resource for her, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Let me also mention to everybody that doesn't know, we will be moving to our new headquarters in about 3 or 4 months. And that is going to be an invaluable resource for us as agents and as brokers. So I encourage you to get to know about that. Tasha, can you share our topic for our next Accelerate class? Because I don't have my thing in front of me.
So next class, I know we talked about doing the mid-year review.
Okay, so
that'll be in June.
That's in June. And,
yeah.
And I can't remember, have we published the May topic yet?
I'm not sure. If you want to talk about the June one, I'll look up the May topic.
So June, what we're going to do is a mid-year review. And my intention there is to get a couple of brokers and agents on a panel and talk about what's been going well, where are our friction points, what do we think the next 6 months is going to look like, how as agents and brokers should we be analyzing what to do to move forward, what's the competitive landscape going to be looking like. And I think that's going to be a great reset for everybody.